We are sending this for your information to refute the libelous statements that have appeared in some newspapers. We have seen that a number of opposition newspapers are again accusing the Risale-i Nur students of founding a Sufi order. This accusation does not contain even a grain of truth, as has been established by the ratified decisions of the nearly 10 criminal courts that have tried cases involving the Risale-i Nur. Also, not the slightest sign of Sufism has been found in the books and letters of the Risale-i Nur when they have previously been seized and then unconditionally returned to their owners. In fact, it states explicitly in our Master Said Nursi's letters and defense speeches that the present is not the time of the Sufi orders, but the time to self-belief. There are many who enter paradise without Sufism, but none who enter it without belief. Despite these open and explicit statements, and the fact that not a shred of evidence has been found concerning Sufi practices, a clandestine group which is religiously lax or anti-religious and wanting to extirpate religion is unable to abide the present flowering of Islam, calls through Islam Sufism in its attempts to prepare the ground in this country to sow its own ideas. Certainly, as always happens, the present campaign, instigated by the coward atheists and their antics, will finally be to the advantage of the country and nation. And following their predecessors, the courts of Aydın and Nazilli will exonerate the Nur students. At present there are numerous positive and relieving developments, the Risale-i Nur being very favorably received everywhere in this country and also in the Islamic world and Europe, and the Turks moves towards rebuilding unity with the Islamic world, successfully producing worldly results unintended by the Nur students, and the government according a high value to Islam, religion, and freedom of conscience, and its endeavoring to repair the destruction caused by the former government, and to pass a law dismissing those who aggress against sacred matters. We have absolutely no doubt that this baseless matter, which has appeared at the same time as the above, has been instigated by persons opposed to the government and to Islam. The evidence refuting some of their lies. Those unprincipled persons clearly calumniated our Master Said Nursi by saying that he lives like a king on charity and donations, whereas he is someone who refused his uncle's soap even, has never become indebted to anyone, and attaching no importance to the 5,000 liras he was given, refused it and returned it, and has never in his life broken his rule of independence, even when suffering the severest oppression and deprivation, in this way intending to preserve the dignity of Islam and honor of religion. Yes, our Master's rule of not accepting gifts has been established by both his 80-year lifetime and the documents presented in numerous courts of law over 30 years. It has been clearly observable by friends and few alike. We leave it to everyone with conscience to judge just how malicious and ill-willed are those who make such accusations at a time everyone has become aware of this clear fact. Thanks to the justice of the Ankara court, our Master Said Nursi's Risale-i Nur is now being printed. He gives as subsistence to those Nur students who have dedicated their lives to the Risale-i Nur and are unable to support themselves a share of the profits gained from the sale of its books. As everyone now knows, he himself lives with the maximum frugality and contentment. We put forward his 80-year lifetime as truthful evidence that he has always lived extraordinarily thriftily and frugally. Another obvious lie given out by those newspapers, which pursue plans to turn the people against the Democrat government, is their distortion of a conversation between two innocent men in Nazilli about Ramadan and their twisting it into something political like establishing an Islamic state. It was a naive calumny cooked up by those political impostors that could not deceive a child even. Everyone knows what they are trying to achieve by employing such fictions. It is lacking in conscience 100 times over to put in the public eye with politicking, fabrications and Islamic author who has never been to Nazilli and knows no one there, and for 40 years has declared, I seek refuge with God from Satan and politics, and has severed all relations with politics, has dedicated his life to the cause of saving belief through the Qur'an and the truths of belief, and is quite unconcerned with any worldly affairs outside that, and who is 87 years old and virtually bedridden, and having been poisoned on numerous occasions has come close to death, and declares himself to be at the door of the grave, and is in great need of rest and peace of mind. It is terrible cruelty to invent such lies and a low-minded iniquity. To impute prophethood to any religious scholar on false pretexts is a direct attack on Islam and treachery towards the Qur'an. Throughout his life, our Master Said Nursi has adhered to the Prophet's, upon whom blessings and peace, practices, Sunnah, and has defied the death sentence so as not to act contrarily to it, and has composed a work of 130 parts in order to revive the Sunnah and preserve belief. Risking his life, he engaged in the struggle against the vicious enemies of religion and was finally victorious. Yes, thousands of copies have been published of a work he wrote about following the Prophet's, upon whom blessings and peace, practices. And his book, The Miracles of Muhammad, upon whom blessings and peace, is an outstanding work about the most noble messenger, upon whom blessings and peace, the glory of the universe, and his being the true and final prophet. While that is the truth, it is understood just how far from truth and right and fairness and conscience are those who level such accusations at Said Nursi. There is a strong possibility that another reason for this affair was that because the Risale-i Nur gives great importance to family life and ensures that women pass their lives chastely, honorably, modestly, and happily, it is very popular with them. For example, some people hostile to religion saw a few articles for women that had been published, and they launched an attack on account of communism on some cooked-up pretext. But they will in no way succeed. For contrary to their expectations, the Risale-i Nur is spreading wondrously among both men and women. His students who are in attendance on him due to his illness, Tahiri, Zübeyir, Ceylan, Bayram, Sungur, Rüştü. In his name be he glorified. A complaint to the Supreme Tribunal, my last word in a most important court case, has been published several times in the biography, and during the trial was sent to various offices in Ankara, the Court of Appeal, and to the chief judges. Now, because a strange, minor example of the incident that was the reason for the complaint has again happened to me, I am describing it as a short addendum to the complaint. For 3 reasons, 2 days ago I visited Konya, which formerly was the madrasa and learned center of Anatolia, and I was very eager to go there. But this gave rise to a number of false allegations. 1. Despite their impecuniousness and the expenses, 2 of my true Nur brothers went to the court in Izmir. On their return, they visited me, so partly in order to save them from further expense, I took them in my private car as far as Konya. The second reason, I intended to visit my brother and his children, who of all my brothers and relations is the only one still alive. He studied with me for 15 years and worked as a mufti for nearly 20 years, and apart from once, I had not seen him for 40 years. The third, I went to visit Mevlana Celaleddin, who, like Imam Rabbani and Imam al-Ghazali, is one of the chief masters of both the old Sayyid and the new Sayyid, and with whom I am closely concerned since his disciples, the Mevlevis, everywhere take an interest in the Risale-i Nur. However, as is written in the piece in the biography about my not meeting with people, just as Almighty God makes me ill to prevent my accepting gifts, so, since visiting and being treated with great respect is a sort of gift, I lost my voice and through divine providence was prevented from speaking. As a result, I did not go to my brother's house even that I could have spoken. I should have remained in Konya for at least 2 or 3 days, but in an hour I performed the prayers and returned. While there, as though something had happened, they published it in the newspapers. I was treated as though I had met with thousands of people, although I had not even been able to go to my brother's house to visit him and had anyway been unable to speak. It is true that the orders given to the police were a serious mistake because of that situation. But because those orders were congruent with my serious indisposition, I was not upset by the police. On the contrary, I forgave them. "May God be pleased with you," I said, and I thanked them. I am very much in need of fresh air, and in the summer I have to take trips around the mountains, and in the winter I stay in the various houses I have rented. I cannot remain in one place because to do so aggravates my illness. I had intended to visit Konya again from time to time. I have 2 houses I rent in Emirda and 1 in Eskişehir, but I felt that meaningless situation in Konya was the reason I was prevented from visiting them for a change of air. I can meet with absolutely no one. I am subject to much illegal ill treatment like this, contrary to my habits. These words of mine describing the situation there may be published as an addendum to the previously written complaint to the Serbian tribunal. Said Nursi. To the President of the Republic and Prime Minister. As a wretched elderly stranger who is 80 or so years of age and at the door of the grave, is sick with several illnesses, and sees himself close to death, I shall explain 2 facts to you. Firstly, I congratulate you with my whole spirit and with complete sincerity, happiness, and joy on your most successful alliance with Pakistan and Iraq, which you have concluded for this nation. I feel in my spirit that, God willing, this alliance of yours is the certain introduction to universal peace and general prosperity among the 400 million Muslims of the Islamic world. I was compelled to write this to you due to a powerful admonition I received while reciting the Tasbihat following the prayers. The reason for this warning of the heart and extreme concern, despite my having abandoned the world and given up politics for the last 30 to 40 years, is this. The Risale-i Nur, which for 50 years has found a direct way to self-belief and is a miracle of the Qur'an in these times, is showing its effect and being accepted in Arabia and Pakistan more than everywhere, and even, according to information we have received, students of the Risale-i Nur are 3 times as numerous in those places than here, as has been established by courts of law. Having seen these momentous consequences while at the door of the grave, I felt compelled to make them known. Secondly, just as racialism gave rise to a perilous situation in the Umayyad period, and great harm was caused by it at the start of the second constitutional period in the form of clubs and societies, and harm was caused to the Mujahid Turks by their blessed brother Arabs during the First World War, again through the exploitation of racialism, so too it may now be utilized against Islamic Brotherhood, for there are signs that coward atheists, the enemies of public peace and security, are again trying to cause harm through racialism. It is the character of racialism to be nurtured by negative action and causing harm to others, but throughout the world, the Turkish nation is known to be first and foremost Muslim, and their racialism is blended with Islam and cannot be separated from it. Turk is synonymous with Muslim, and any who are not Muslim have cast off their Turkishness. Like the Turks, the Arabs and Arabness and Arab nationalism have combined with Islam, and it has to be like that. Their true nationality is Islam. That is sufficient. Racialism is altogether a grave danger. God willing, your most valuable alliance with Iraq and Pakistan at this time will repulse this dangerous harm and will be the means of gaining for this nation and country 400 million brother Muslims in place of 4 or 5 million racists and the friendship of 800 million Christians and members of other religions who are in extreme need of peace and general reconciliation. I am telling you of this since it is a conviction I feel in the depths of my spirit. Thirdly, 65 years ago, a governor read me a piece from a newspaper. An irreligious secretary for the colonies was speaking. He had taken the Qur'an in his hands and had said, "As long as this remains in the hands of the Muslims, we will not be able to truly dominate them and gain mastery over them. We shall have either to discredit the Qur'an or to make the Muslims lose their love of it." Thus, with these two ideas, a fearsome secret society bent on corruption tried to cause harm to this unhappy, self-sacrificing, innocent, patriotic nation. So, 65 years ago, I sought help from the all-wise Qur'an in the face of this current. With a short way to the truth and the idea of a large Islamic university, I found two means to save our lives the hereafter, and, as a resulting benefit of it, to save also our lives in this world from absolute despotism and the destruction of misguidance, and to increase and develop brotherhood between the Muslim peoples. The first means. This was the Risale-i Nur. Certain evidence that it has served the unfolding of brotherhood based on belief through the strength of belief are the unprecedented conditions and persecution and powerlessness under which it was written, and the effect it has shown in most places in the Islamic world and in America and Europe, and its victories these last 30 years over revolutionaries and atheistic philosophy and such schools of thought as materialism and naturalism, and the fact that no court of law or expert has been able to refute it. God willing, sometime those like you who have found the key to Islamic brotherhood will make heard to the Islamic world this manifestation of the Qur'an's miraculousness. Second means. 65 years ago, I wanted to go to the University of Al-Azhar. I said to myself, it is the madrasa of the Islamic world, and I intended to study there. But it was not to be. However, in His mercy, Almighty God imparted an idea to my spirit. Just as Al-Azhar University is a universal madrasa in Africa, however much larger Asia is than Africa, a place of learning, an Islamic university, proportionately larger, is needed in Asia. It would both prevent racialism corrupting the Muslim peoples, for example, the nations of Arabia, India, Iran, Caucasia, Turkestan, and Kurdistan, and true Islamic nationhood, which is real, positive, sacred, and universal, true nationhood. It would manifest the total unfolding of the fundamental principle of the Qur'an. Verily, the believers are brothers, and it would reconcile the sciences of philosophy and those of religion, and make peace between European civilization and the truths of Islam. It would also unite the people of the secular educational establishments and those of the madrasas, the religious schools, so that they should assist each other. In the same way that I have worked for a full 55 years for the truths of the Risale-i Nur, so also have I worked for such a university in the center of the eastern provinces between India, Arabia, Iran, Caucasia, and Turkestan, a university in the style of Al-Azhar called the Madrasatu Zahra, which would be both a modern secular school and a religious school. The first to appreciate its value was Sultan Reshad, may God grant him mercy, who donated 20,000 gold liras just for its construction. Then, when I returned from captivity in the Great War, in Ankara, 163 deputies out of the 200 present agreed to allot 150,000 liras to the university at that time when funds were so scarce, and put their signatures to it. Mustafa Kemal was one of them. That is to say, through assigning to it what is almost equivalent to 5 million liras at the present time, the deputies demonstrated the surpassing importance of founding such a university. A number of them signed it, even who were extremely negligent in religion and were in favor of westernization and stripping off all traditions. Only 2 of them said, "We are now in greater need of westernization and civilization than traditional learning and the sciences of religion." I replied to them, "Even if to suppose the impossible, you were in no need of them, as is indicated by the fact that most of the prophets have appeared in Asia and the East, and most of the philosophers in the West, it is the sense of religion rather than the effects of science and philosophy that will be the spring of true progress of Asia. If you do not take this natural law into consideration, and in the name of westernization abandon the tradition of Islam, and even base your ideas on atheism, it is necessary and imperative for the security of the nation and the country that you give definite support to Islam and the truths of religion in the eastern provinces, which are the center of 4 or 5 large nations. Of thousands of examples, I shall tell you the following one. While in one, I asked a patriotic Kurdish student of mine, "The Turks have performed great services. What do you think of them?" He replied, "I prefer a Muslim Turk to a Kurdish brother who is depraved. I am closer to him than to my own father, for the Turks serve the cause of belief wholeheartedly." Some time passed, and that student, may God have mercy on him, entered a secular school in Istanbul while I was being held as a prisoner of war. I saw him when I returned, influenced by some racialist teachers there. In reaction, he had taken another path due to Kurdish nationalism. He said to me, "Now I prefer a depraved Kurd, or even an atheist one, to an upright Turk." Later, I was able to save him after speaking to him on several occasions. He was persuaded that the Turks are the heroic army of the Islamic nation. Deputies who asked the questions, "There are close on 5 million Kurds in the East. There are nearly 100 million Iranians and Indians. There are 70 million Arabs. There are 40 million Caucasians. I wonder which is more necessary for these brothers who are neighbors and brethren and in need of one another, the lesson from religion that my student received in the madrasa in one, or was his second state better, which gets those nations into chaos and considers no one apart from people of the same race and studies only the sciences of philosophy, which do not recognize Islamic brotherhood and ignore the Islamic sciences? I ask you." After hearing this answer of mine, the deputies who were opposed to tradition and supported the idea of westernization in every respect rose and signed the bill. I shall not say their names. May God forgive them their faults. They are dead now. Fourthly, the President has attached great importance to the Eastern University amid other pressing political matters, and has performed the great service of passing a law specifically allotting it 60 million liras, which will be a source of pride for it. And giving the start to this Islamic university out of his feelings for his former profession of teaching, he has earned the gratitude of all the teachers of the East. It will be the cause of great honor for himself. He is again placing under consideration this university a foundation stone of universal peace in the Middle East, and its main citadel, is an act of service which will produce far-reaching, beneficial results for this country, this state, this nation. The sciences of religion will be the basis in the university, for the destruction of the external forces is moral and spiritual. It is true unbelief. The atom bomb to counter such moral and spiritual destruction can only acquire force and held it through moral and spiritual matters in that respect. Since in this matter the opinion and ideas should be sought of someone who has dedicated his life to it for the last 55 years and has studied it minutely in all its details considering all the consequences, and since you have felt yourselves compelled to hold consultations about it in America and in Europe, I too certainly have the right to speak concerning it. We await this from you in the name of the whole patriotic nation. Said Nursi. In His name be He glorified. My dear, loyal, devoted, sincere, earnest brothers and true, serious, steadfast friends in the service of the Qur'an, I am going to describe to you a state of mind of great significance and an illness I suffer from which is apparently extremely troublesome but in fact comprises a considerable instance of divine mercy and providence and affords an ease of the spirit and is a sign that my task is completed. So I do not complain but offer thanks. I nevertheless request your prayers so that I may endure it. That state of mind is as follows. If I say something, I am suddenly overcome by a tremendous thirst and am as though prevented. Formerly, I used to drink some water once or twice a day, but now, although I eat very little, I am compelled to drink water 20 or 30 times. In fact, 2 days ago it was even worse, and I supposed I had been poisoned. I divulged this suspicion to the brothers who were with me. I beseech divine mercy for patience and fortitude so that I might bear that crushing illness. Then suddenly it came to my heart that there has been a manifestation of providence and mercy in most of the difficulties I have suffered in my lifetime, so, God willing, there will be a ray of mercy in this too. It was this: the atheists and the ascetics from among men and the jinns trying to poison me and silence me is an instance of divine mercy showing that I have fulfilled my duty and will take my rest. For last year I started to teach the Qur'anic commentary, Isharat-i Ijaz, and the Arabic Mesnevi, and this continued for a year. Then, although my coward enemies, the ascetics from among men and jinn, tried with their various plots to silence me, divine mercy bestowed the Turkish translations of both works, and for the greater part, the Risale-i Nur taught itself, leaving no need for teachers. As a consequence, as a divine bounty, this extraordinary illness was a means of releasing me from my duties of teaching and of my taking a rest. It also occurred to my spirit that there are thousands or even hundreds of thousands of young Saids to speak and teach in my place. Through a divine grace, the Risale-i Nur does not need onerous instruction like the other religious sciences. The wondrous prediction of Gauss Geilani, "You are protected within the purview of providence," appears to be exactly true both at that time and now. And now that enemies are becoming friends, speaking and meeting with people may well be the delectable, fleeting fruits in this world of our service which looks to the hereafter. It therefore should be made the tool of nothing, lest maximum sincerity be impaired. Also, one should not interfere in God's business, divine determining ordained and permitted this severe condition, not against me, but for me. I appoint as my deputies my spiritual sons, the youths who are with me, and I have named in my will. I regard anyone who speaks with them as speaking with myself. The enduring one, he is the enduring one, your brother, Said Nursi. This illness our master suffers shows that the coward atheist discovered a drug that prevents speech and they administered it to him. In short, we also see that he has been prevented from shaking hands with people and meeting and talking with them. Those who attend on him, Tahiri, Zübeyir, Ceylan, Hüsnü, Bayram.